Welcome to Hannity, and yes, we are broadcasting tonight. We're in London, where President Trump just wrapped up a busy day during his first official visit right here to the United Kingdom. We're going to have more on all of that in just a minute, but first, what was an incredible day in our nation's capital, fireworks all over Capitol Hill. This is a historic day in so many ways. Disgraced anti-Trump FBI agent Peter Strzok, he was in the hot seat, and tonight we are just finally now beginning to expose the biggest corruption, bias, dereliction at some of the highest levels, sadly, of the FBI and Department of Justice. In other words, everything we have been telling you on this show is true, and the saddest part is we are only about 15% into this abuse of power and the biggest corruption scandal in history. We're going to show you the most contentious, the most revealing moments from the hearing as an incredibly smug, arrogant, narcissistic Peter Strzok suspended every bit of logic, lied about his blatant bias, and even took, yes, some veiled, cheap shots at yours truly. Now, tonight, we're going to have a direct message for the corrupt FBI investigator. You know what? You may have smelled me and my fellow Trump voters in a Virginia Walmart in 2016, but now you're going to be hearing loudly from all of us until you are held accountable for what are your malignant actions. All right, hold on, sit tight, buckle up. It's time for tonight's explosive breaking news London opening monologue. All right, he was the FBI agent at the very heart of the deep state, and as I have been telling you now for a long time, the biggest corruption, abuse of power scandal, sadly, in our history. Now, in 2016, he was the lead investigator in the Clintons' server probe. He played a lead role in writing Hillary Clinton's exoneration, of course, before the investigation, before ultimately conducting her investigation months later, despite what we now have, which is incontrovertible evidence that Hillary Clinton was guilty of numerous serious felonies and crimes. He then immediately transitioned to the Trump-Russia witch hunt left-wing talking point. All the while, he has expressed a massive bias in favor of Hillary Clinton, who he was supposed to be investigating, and an extraordinary, extreme hatred, animus against Donald Trump to his FBI colleague, Mistress Lisa Page. All, by the way, on official FBI phones used to conduct official FBI business. Now, tomorrow, Lisa Page, well, she's set to testify like she was Wednesday before a closed-door session in Congress. We'll see. But today, for the very first time in a public setting, yes, Peter Strzok was now forced to begin to answer for his prejudice, his bigoted point of view before he did an investigation, including, by the way, texts and statements like these. Take a look.
You want me to read this?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. OMG, he's an idiot. Hi, how is Trump other than a douche? Melania? Trump is a disaster. I have no idea how destabilizing his presidency would be. Again,
and I'll preface it by saying this for context. Ms. Page said, not ever going to become president, right? Right?
No, he's not. We'll stop it.
Repeat that again.
No, he's not. We'll stop it. I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. What the F happened to our country, Lise?
Okay, read it again that way.
Sir, did you not, was it not intelligible?
You
just want to hear it for me to repeat it?
Please.
Okay, sir. Sure, happy to indulge you. I can't pull away what the F happened to our country, Lise.
What arrogance, what narcissism. Will stop it, an insurance policy? Now get this. Despite everything you just heard, Peter Strzok actually wants you to dispense of all the common sense that God gave you, and he wants you to spend all logic that you have, all rationale, and believe in this fantasy that his actions were not abusively biased and, frankly, in my view, corrupt. Watch this.
Let me be clear, unequivocally, and under oath, not once in my 26 years of defending our nation did my personal opinions impact any official action I took. This is true for the Clinton email investigation, for the investigation into Russian interference, and for every other investigation I've worked on. It is not who I am, and it is not something I would ever do, period. I understand that my sworn testimony will not be enough for some people. After all, Americans are skeptical of anything coming out of Washington. But the fact is, after months of investigations, there's simply no evidence of bias in my professional actions.
I'd like to know how many lawyers worked on that whole show that you just saw. What you just heard is a national scandal. It is a disgrace. Remember, it was him, Strzok, who called the president an idiot, abysmal, and his girlfriend, Lisa Page, called him loathsome and awful. And Strzok said Hillary Clinton should win the 2016 election 100 million to 0. And Donald Trump is bigoted, an enormous bleep. He's a disaster. He's a bleeping idiot. His presidency is bleeping terrifying. This is just a small sample, by the way, of what are hundreds of anti-Trump texts. Now, Congressman Trey Gowdy, he will be joining us tonight in just a few minutes. He called out this cancerous prejudice and discrimination. Take a look.
Agent Strzok, despite the plain language of his texts and emails, despite the Inspector General's report, and despite common sense, doesn't think he was biased. He thinks calling someone destabilizing for the country isn't bias. He thinks promising to protect the country from someone he hasn't even begun to investigate isn't bias. He has a different set of rules for others that he's investigating. Agent Strzok thinks saying someone he is allegedly investigating should be elected president 100 million to 0 before he ever interviews her. He doesn't think that's bias. Agent Strzok thinks pronouncing someone innocent before bothering to interview more than 30 different witnesses isn't bias.
If we don't get this right, we will lose this country. And of course, Peter Strzok's animus, his hatred towards Donald Trump, it didn't stop with just the president himself. No. It also extended to Trump voters. You know, we, the people, all of us that are irredeemable, deplorables, you know, we Americans that actually believe in God and our Bibles and our religion and believe in the Second Amendment. Take a look at this.
Let's discuss a text that hits home for me. On August 26, 2016, you texted Ms. Page, quote, just went to a Southern Virginia Walmart. I could smell the Trump support. And smell is in capital letters, all capital letters. What does Trump support smell like, Mr. Strzok?
Sir, that's an expression of speech. I clearly wasn't smelling one thing or the other. What I was commenting on is living in Northern Virginia.
What does that mean?
What I meant by that was living in Northern Virginia, having traveled 100 and 150 miles south within the same state, I was struck by the extraordinary difference in the expression of political opinion and belief amongst the community there.
And you described that as smell in capital letters.
Sir, that was a choice of the quick choice of words in the text.
All right. So earlier,
seen or heard.
Okay. So earlier, you had texted Ms. Page on that another part of Virginia, Loudoun County, which is, I think, in Northern Virginia, is, quote, still ignorant hillbillies, end quote. Is that what you meant?
No, sir, not at all.
That you consider Trump supporters to be ignorant hillbillies?
Not at all.
Smelly hillbillies that like Walmart. Now, you follow that exchange. Once again, Peter Strzok asked all of us, the American people, to suspend logic and believe he didn't really say what he was caught texting. Watch one more unbelievable, insane denial.
You were both rooting for Hillary Clinton to win, and you both detested Donald Trump. Did you not?
I think that's fair to say. Okay.
And in fact, as we've learned, you apparently found Donald Trump's supporters detestable too, like those around Loudoun, Virginia, as we've already heard, whom you called ignorant blanks. I'm not going to say that here, and that you had visited a Southern Virginia Walmart and could smell the Trump support. Don't you think that the American people, when they're paying your salaries, when they're paying for a fair and unbiased investigation by none other than the FBI, deserved a whole lot better than what those comments I just referred to reflect?
Congressman, two things. One, I absolutely regret the appearance of some of those texts and wish I would have said or phrased or not said at all some of the things I did. Two, I disagree completely with your attribution of my views of Trump supporters. I never said that. I expressed no such thing.
Now, no intelligent American would believe that denial with more verbal gymnastics than we actually saw. I never thought we could top this. Former President Bill Clinton. Remember, it all depends what is. Now, we were alone, but I never really thought we were alone. In order to believe these bizarre explanations from this verbal contortionist, you would literally have to suspend all sense of fact and fiction. And of course, Peter Strzok, well, he does think that the smelly, irredeemable, deplorable Trump supporters of Walmart, the hillbillies like us that believe in God and guns and Bibles and religion, we don't measure up. He thinks, yeah, I guess we're pretty dumb and he could just do whatever he wants. I have some bad news for Peter. He's not the infallible super patriot that he clearly has convinced himself he is. He lies to our face, and in the end, he's not going to get away with it. In other words, he's not above the law, because the American people saw these lies today. We know a cover-up when we see one. By the way, so did Congressman Louis Gohmert. Take a look at this tense exchange.
And you have come in here and said, I had no bias. And you do it with a straight face. And I watched you in the private testimony you gave. And I told some of the other guys, he is really good. He's lying. He knows, we know he's lying. And he could probably pass polygraph. No, the disgrace is what this man has done.
The gentleman from Texas will suspend for a moment.
There is the disgrace. And it won't be recaptured anytime soon because of the damage you've done to the justice system. And I've talked to FBI agents around the country. You've embarrassed them. You've embarrassed yourself. And I can't help but wonder when I see you looking there with a little smirk, how many times did you look so innocent into your wife's eye and lie to her about Lisa?
Mr. Chairman, this is outrageous.
The credibility of a witness
Shame
is always
on you,
an issue.
Mr. Chairman, please.
Have you Mr. Chairman, this is intolerable harassment of the witness.
What's wrong with that? You need your medication.
It is clear, it is obvious to every American with common sense. Peter Strzok definitely has an unfaithful relationship with the truth. Now, without a doubt, this is the greatest case of cognitive dissonance that I've ever seen in my life. He's out of touch with reality. He thinks only he knows what's right for America. It couldn't be more obvious. The poster child of what we now know is a deep state, thinking he knew better and knows better than we smelly Trump supporters. But predictably, in order to deflect, he used an all-too-common tactic of the left, launched into some attack into some of the, quote, extreme folks on TV. And I have a response, just like yours truly. Take a look.
I understand why people might think that, particularly based on the misrepresentations of extreme folks in the media, conspiracy theorists, folks in this body and elsewhere. And that's why I'm glad to be here today publicly, why I'm glad to hear that people are calling for the release of my private interview so that people can judge for themselves who I am, what I said, and the facts, and not something that's being spun or misrepresented in some 10 o'clock talk show or other place.
If you don't like the reporting and the truth and the investigations, I have an invitation to Mr. Arrogant One. And by the way, you can bring your girlfriend, Lisa Page, with you. We can do it right to my face. And I'll even offer you, Peter, what I offered your boss, Jim. 3 hours of radio on 570 of the best radio stations in America. And right here, thanks to our loyal viewers, the #1 show in all of cable news. I'll give you a full hour. I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2 full hours. We'll run it 2 days in a row, a 2-day extravaganza. If your track record is so impeccable and you really haven't done anything wrong, you're welcome. 2 hours and 3 on radio. Come and defend yourself. I'm not going to hold my breath. And believe it or not, in addition to Strzok's obfuscation, he actually confirmed a very important piece of information about the deep state. This is something we have been telling you about for months. As Strzok admitted, Christopher Steele's dirty dossier was in fact supplied to the FBI by Bruce Orr. Remember, Orr was the high-ranking Justice Department official during the Obama administration. He was married to Nellie Orr. She worked for Fusion GPS, who worked closely, yes, with the foreign national Christopher Steele, who sold us Russian lies to influence the election. What's this?
You said you did not personally receive documents from Mr. Orr, but the FBI did. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you also said the FBI got documents from a different source in mid-September. Different source than whom?
Different source from Mr. Orr. It was not Mr. Orr who provided the initial documents that I became aware of in mid-September.
So Mr. Orr did not hand you the dossier?
That's Mr. Orr didn't hand me anything. Mr.
FBI.
Orr provided information to the FBI that included material that is what everybody's calling the dossier. Reporting from Mr. Steele.
Say that again. Say that sentence again. Mr. Orr provided what?
He provided some elements of reporting that my understanding is originated from Mr. Steele.
So Bruce Orr did give the FBI information relative to the dossier?
Yes.
Bought and paid for, foreign national put together, Russian lies to influence the election. A perfect example of the deep state working together to use a piece of what Clinton paid for, the Russian lies, all to impact and influence an election, a presidential election. This is a massive abuse of power scandal. Everything we have been saying is right. We're going to have a lot more on this all throughout the show. But first, I want to end our monologue tonight with a message directly to Peter Strzok. Just so you know, I love law enforcement, Peter. My mom worked as a prison guard for about 25 years of her life. She worked more 16-hour shifts than I could ever add up or recall. My father, a family court officer. Many relatives who worked in law enforcement, including the NYPD. Two who made it to the tippy top that worked for that organization that I have so much respect for, the FBI. They were revered in my family. Now, today you told the American people not to believe your own words, their clear meaning. You tried to cover up your bias. You took no ownership of your terrible and despicable actions. Mr. Strzok, you are not the 99.9% of law enforcement in this country that serve and protect us. Nor was your girlfriend Lisa. Nor was your boss Jim or Deputy FBI Director McCabe. What you are is a partisan political hack, and you abuse the trust and the power that we, the smelly people of the United States that like Walmart, gave to you. The people that work hard every single day, contribute to the society, make it better, play by the rules, pay their taxes, use their salary, obey the laws, get taxed into oblivion by corrupt government. The people who struggle to make ends meet, the ones that you have shown nothing but contempt and hatred for, and the ones you think you're superior to. And if your chosen candidate, your beloved Hillary, had won, none of this corruption would have come to light. Now the deep state, your days are numbered. And we smelly Trump supporters, and I'm one, I'm an irredeemable deplorable, we will not rest. And all of your deep state colleagues, until they are held accountable for what you've done here. Joining us now, two congressmen who did grill Peter Strzok earlier today. He's the chairman of the Freedom Caucus. Of course, Mark Meadows from North Carolina, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Chairman Meadows, this guy wants us to believe that his own words have no meaning. I thought Clinton parsed words really well in a corrupt way. This is a whole new level. Let's get your reaction to the hearings.
Well, it's a whole new level, Sean, but I think the other thing is he wants us to believe him when he's saying one thing that's very different than the evidence would suggest. And so today, Peter Strzok's luck ran out. I'm here to tell you that there are a number of things that he said today that are not supported by evidence, and so they could be potentially false testimony, and they're in conflict with other testimony that we've had from Rod Rosenstein, specifically the lead-up that you had in your monologue talking about Bruce Orr's involvement. You have one part of the DOJ saying, oh, he wasn't involved. You have testimony today that suggests that he is. We've long suspected that. So I can just tell you, the American people know that there was one particular witness today that had a hard time with the facts.
So, Congressman Gaetz, I know that this is the main question I get from people. So Hillary Clinton had a rigged investigation, and they allowed her to continue because she was the favored one. He thought, of course, it was going to be 100 million and none because smelly people like me and others wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. So I guess the question is, when do we get justice? When does a real investigation into Hillary happen? When do we get to the bottom of the FISA abuse scandal? Jim Jordan's going to join us later. He got some new information on that today. When does the truth come out, and when are these people held responsible for abusing the power that we, the people, gave them, the smelly people?
We are only going to get justice when Attorney General Jeff Sessions does his job and follows the advice that dozens of us in Congress have been giving him to appoint a second special counsel, Sean. But we won't get justice from the Democrats. If you watched the hearing today, you saw the Democrats give a 5-hour cat bath to Peter Strzok. You had one Democrat from the state of New Jersey say that he deserved hugs and kisses. A Democrat from Rhode Island said that we needed to give Peter Strzok our apology, and one Democrat from Tennessee even said that he deserved the Purple Heart. That is incredibly offensive to the people who've gone downrange and fought for our country, who live in my district, who've been wounded in action. And it just shows the extent to which anything that could in any way be negative for Donald Trump is something the Democrats will embrace, even if that very same stuff is harmful to our country and the institutions that we all have to be able to rely on.
Congressman Meadows, how do we now hold these people accountable? To me, if I did what Hillary did, if I lied to a FISA judge, if I rigged an investigation, I would expect that I probably wouldn't end up like these people.
Well, you wouldn't, because there's two standards. There's a standard here in Washington, D.C. for the well-connected, of which obviously Hillary Clinton, Peter Strzok, some of the others that we're now seeing, perhaps even the director of the CIA and James Clapper, the well-connected. There's a standard for them, and yet there's a standard for all other Americans. So here's how we have to actually get to the bottom of it. There has to be criminal referrals that start. Enough of the talk, enough of the hearings. You know, we're starting to gather enough information. It is time for criminal referrals, and that includes going back to some of the evidence that has been put forth.
All right, you guys were amazing. Without the Freedom Caucus, we're in trouble. Trey Gowdy, Jim Jordan, Sarah, and Greg next, straight ahead.
Your testimony is Bob Mueller did not kick you off because of the content of your text. He kicked you off because of some appearance that he was worried about.
My testimony, what you asked and what I responded to, was that he kicked me off because of my bias. I'm stating to you it is not my understanding that he kicked me off because of any bias, that it was done based on the appearance. If you want to represent what you said accurately, I'm happy to answer that question, but I don't appreciate what was originally said being changed.
I don't give a damn what you appreciate, Agent Strzok. I don't appreciate having an FBI agent with an unprecedented level of animus working on 2 major investigations during 2016. In addition to disappointing the hell out of my Democrat colleagues, that someone who was investigating Russian collusion didn't think there was any there, why would you be concerned? Why would you not be ecstatic that there was no collusion? Why the word concern?
Sir, I don't know what I meant.
All right, that was more of the fireworks at today's explosive hearings, House hearings, with the disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok. Joining us now, the man you just saw, House Government and Oversight and Government Reform Committee Chairman, South Carolina Congressman Trey Gowdy. Congressman, good to see you. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
At the heart of this, I think you captured it there, Congressman, and that is a bias, and this man was in the forefront of everything. Do you believe, as I do, that Hillary Clinton had a rigged investigation, that she violated the Espionage Act? It was a big case of obstruction with the emails, deletions, and bleach pit. And do you believe, as I believe, that, in fact, he went after Trump with a vengeance because of a political view that he expressed often?
Well, let's take Trump first. Before he ever began investigating alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, he'd already made up his mind that President Trump would be destabilizing for the country. I mean, think about how serious that word is, Sean. Destabilizing for our country, and he hadn't even begun to interview the first person in August. He said, we'll stop it. We need an insurance policy. And then he began talking about impeachment one day after Bob Mueller's investigation began. So Peter Strzok has a level of bias that would make it impossible for any prosecutor to stand in front of a jury and use him as a witness. On the other hand, while he's convicting Donald Trump before the investigation begins, he's exonerating Hillary Clinton. $100 million to 0 is what the vote ought to be, and he hadn't interviewed her, and he hadn't interviewed 30 other witnesses.
Congressman, did you believe his explanation as it relates to his text messages I did not believe it. I do not believe the American people believe what they saw today.
No, the only people who believe his explanation are the 30-some-odd Democrats. Keep in mind, Sean, 60 Democrats have already voted to move forward with impeachment on President Trump, and Bob Mueller had released his first single solitary finding. So they've already made up their minds. Of course, they'd be sympathetic to an FBI agent who's already made up his mind. He's the only person in America who doesn't think he was biased. He's the only person in America that does not understand how incredibly detrimental those texts are to any kind of serious investigation. So, look, I spent 10 hours with him 2 weeks ago, about an equal amount of time today. He just doesn't, he thinks what his personal opinion is what the rest of us call bias.
Well, yeah, I guess that's where the smelly people will go to Walmart. And as I mentioned in my monologue tonight, I happen to be one of those people. I like Walmart, and I like Kmart, and I like Costco's, and I like Target. And you can get everything you want there, and you get a pretty good deal at every one of those places. But the more important question, if I remember correctly, you were a prosecutor and you never lost a case. Am I correct in that, sir?
I was definitely a prosecutor, yes, sir. I had some good cases.
And you never lost a case?
I had some very courageous victims and some good cops.
So what I want to ask, and this is really important, what I am worried about more than anything else here, if Hillary Clinton is allowed to take things that are subpoenaed and delete them, use bleach bit on the hard drives, have AIDS breakup devices and hammers and remove SIM cards and move the Espionage Act, you cannot mishandle or destroy classified or top secret information. Both those things happen. He wrote an exoneration with, of course, the FBI Director Comey in early May. They didn't interview her till July 2nd. She was exonerated on July 5th. That, to me, you've been involved in these things. Do we have equal justice under the law? Do we have equal application of our laws?
No, and that's what frustrates people. That's what frustrates your viewers who wonder, well, would that happen to me too? Would the director of the FBI announce my innocence before 20-some-odd interviews have been done, including my own? And keep this in mind too, Sean. They were really clear when they went into her interview. She's not going to be charged with anything unless she lies. So the mishandling of classified information, she was never in jeopardy from that, even before they interviewed her. So, look, I think everybody would like that deal, that the FBI is going to come talk to me, and the only thing I got to do is tell the truth. Yes, I robbed the bank. Yes, I kidnapped this person. Yes, I committed bank fraud. All you got to do is tell the truth, and you're going to get out of jail free. Converse that with the fact that Donald Trump, not a single solitary witness had been interviewed before Peter Strzok is promising to stop him from ever becoming president. That is a dichotomy that erodes public trust in our justice system and in our law enforcement.
I'm going to have Jim Jordan on the program after, who also had a chance to question Peter Strzok today. When you add the FISA abuse questions that he was asking, I call this the single biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in American history. Let's stay on what you were just talking about. Was Peter Strzok and others, were they abusing their power in an attempt to impact an American election in a way that they saw fit to help one candidate and hurt another candidate? And what does that mean if that can happen in the United States of America, Congressman?
Well, a politicization of law enforcement is the end of us. If we begin to view that blindfolded lady holding a set of scales as really having an R or a D on her breastplate, if that's where we are, then we're finished as a republic. I am proud to be on the House Intel Committee, and we've done some really important work on the FISA abuse. It's been a long slog, and we hadn't had a lot of help at times, but Devin has made really good progress on uncovering what went into that FISA application. So I don't know. I know this. I know that there were lots of things that should have been in that application that was presented to the judge that were not. And I know that they decided not to charge her before they interviewed 30 fact witnesses. So if that is not a dichotomy, that we're going to withhold exculpatory information in this case, and we're going to withhold any prospect of prosecution in that case, I don't know how anyone cannot be left with the conclusion that if your name is Clinton, you're going to be treated differently than if your name is Jones or Smith.
What you're saying, Congressman, is really scary to me and should frighten every American. I want to ask you one last question. What now? I mean, Hillary Clinton had a rigged investigation. I think the evidence is overwhelming and incontrovertible for obstruction and for the Espionage Act and a number of statutes we laid out here. What happens to her and what happens to the people that were involved in the exoneration before the investigation to impact a presidential election? Never mind lying to 4 FISA judges to get warrants to spy on Americans and opposition party candidate representatives.
Well, Sean, this is where I get myself in a little bit of trouble because all of the principal decision makers now were put in place by President Trump. Jeff Sessions, Rod Rosenstein, Chris Wray. It's no longer Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder and Jim Comey. I mean, it's our folks. So if they have uncovered systemic abuse or any potential criminality, they have an obligation to prosecute it. My fear is when you have the head of the FBI stand up in front of the entire world and exonerate her the way Jim Comey did, I don't know a prosecutor in the world that is good enough to win that case. So our opportunity to find out whether or not she violated the Espionage Act, I think Jim Comey ruined that. They ruined it by not interviewing her seriously, and then they ruined it by that unprecedented press conference. So we'll never know the answer to your question.
All right, Congressman, profound words. I hope the American people are paying very close attention. I think you did a great job today. We have a lot of ground to cover. And when we come back, Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, they've been at the forefront of breaking so much of this story. It's a big, sad, but historic and important night as we continue from London.
Well, gosh, just days after Mueller is appointed, in 2 text messages, one on the 19th of May and one on the 22nd of May, you reference impeachment. Did Bob Mueller ask you why you were referencing impeachment?
Congressman, as I just stated, Director Mueller did not ask me about any text message.
And it's just really interesting to me that when you were so damaging to the investigation that you had to go, that Bob Mueller, the person who brought in all these people that had connections to the Hillary Clinton campaign, did not ask you about a single text message. And I tend to believe, Mr. Chairman, that it's because he did not want to know the answer and that there was bias and that your perception of Bob Mueller's perception of you is totally unreliable.
All right, Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida questioning FBI agent Peter Strzok about his dismissal from the Mueller probe. Yeah, day 1 impeachment. Right here with reaction. The title captures it all. Less than 10 days away. The Russia hoax, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, and yes, frame Donald Trump, all on display today. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett also here on set with us in London. We have investigative reporter, Fox News contributor Sarah Carter. All right, so everything that we have talked about, you reported, all the people that we bring on are absolutely right. How do we get justice? That's now the question the American people want to know.
I think first, in an effort to get justice, documents need to be released to the public. The public needs to be able to see what the House Intelligence Committee has seen recently. There are 19 pages of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the very last FISA warrant.
This is the one Rosenstein signed?
Correct. This is the one that Rosenstein signed, and that's why this is so important.
Why are these 19 pages of that application so important?
The 19 pages are so important because they basically will reveal exactly what happened. It'll answer the questions as to how is Peter Strzok involved in the FISA warrants, in obtaining those FISA warrants. It will also, I think, also the supporting documents. Now remember, Sean, the only person at this moment in time that can get those documents declassified for the American people is President Trump.
And by the way, you're echoing something that Greg Jarrett has been saying, and I agree with both of you on. In one way, it's a sad day, Greg, but it's also a day that everything that you have talked about, Sarah's talked about, and I'm going to miss a million names. Sebastian Gorka, I mean, I'll just go through the list. David Schoen, too many people. Joe DeGeneva, Alan Dershowitz. We've been right. Now, how do we get to the justice part? The fact that it was a rigged investigation, we'll get to Jim Jordan on FISA, that FISA judges were lied to, that they went after and tried to abuse their power as you say, to get Donald Trump?
It needs to be fully exposed, and then the people behind it, like Peter Strzok and James Comey and Andrew McCabe and Lisa Page, all need to be prosecuted under the various statutes that you and I have talked about so often. Today, this guy said he didn't remember writing the infamous text message in which he was promising to stop Donald Trump from becoming president. Isn't it interesting that James Comey also has the same amnesia? He told the Inspector General, I don't remember writing those words that Hillary Clinton was grossly negligent and committed crimes. Well, he wrote it not once, but twice. He gave it to Peter Strzok. Strzok and Page then decide we've got to change it. Comey wants to clear Clinton even though she committed crimes. So they sit down at a computer and they make the changes. And he doesn't seem to remember much about that either.
They're writing the exoneration in early May. They didn't talk to the people till July and exonerated her 3 days later. What if any of we're the smelly people, the irredeemable deplorables that like our Bible God, we believe in God and we believe in the Second Amendment. What if anyone else did this?
Oh, they'd be behind bars already. I mean, this guy's the personification of the arrogance of power and corruption. And, you know, he's in complete denial. He didn't fool anybody today. He was pompous, pretentious, a smirk on his face the whole time. And, you know, with arrogant, the critical questions.
Narcissistic.
Yeah, within the critical questions, and you had it in your monologue, he refused to answer some of those questions. But the truth in the end will come out, and he'll be held accountable.
Last word.
Let's get those documents so that the American people can see what's going on.
The 19 pages,
the
final
19 pages of the final application of the FISA. The letter was delivered in June to President Trump. Now, a few people have already seen that information, but they're sworn to secrecy. The DOJ will not allow them to talk about it. So let's get that to the American people, and we will get justice. We'll find out.
Thank you both. It's a sad gladness when you're right. But look at what's happened to our country. It's scary. This is about a presidential election. Jim Jordan, he went in on the FISA issue. He broke news today against Peter Strzok. He's next. Straight ahead.
Personally received documents from Mr. Orr, but the FBI did. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you also said the FBI got documents from a different source in mid-September. Different source than whom?
Different source from Mr. Orr. It was not Mr. Orr who provided the initial documents that I became aware of in mid-September.
So Mr. Orr did not hand you the dossier?
Mr. Orr didn't hand me anything. Mr. Orr provided information to the FBI that included material that is what everybody's calling the dossier. Reporting from Mr. Steele.
Say that again. Say that sentence again. Mr. Orr provided what?
He provided some elements of reporting that my understanding is originated from Mr. Steele.
So Bruce Orr did give the FBI information relative to the dossier?
Yes.
Wow, that pause was very revealing. One of the more explosive revelations during today's marathon House hearing with disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok. Joining us now with more, Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan. Oh, by the way, Congressman Jordan, welcome to the club. If you support Donald Trump, you had to know the lies, the smears against you are obviously a political attack.
Yeah,
I'm sorry you're going through that.
Yeah, you've been through it. You know what it's like. So thank you. Yeah. But today,
I know it every day. It's all of us. Anyone that supports the president.
Exactly right.
And I'm sorry you and your family have to go through that.
Thank you. Today, think about that. Top DOJ official Bruce Orr actually hands parts of the dossier to the FBI. And remember, Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie, worked for Fusion GPS, who was paid by the Clinton campaign to put this entire dossier together. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that the FBI has admitted they got parts of the dossier from Bruce Orr, a fellow DOJ employee. That's scary.
And the wife of Bruce Orr, wasn't she one of the ones that worked for Fusion GPS that
all
had
summer
the
long.
money that was funneled through Perkins Coie, that hired the foreign national, and that got Russian lies? Oh, Russia tried to impact the election through Hillary. Is that not true?
Exactly. Bruce Orr, fourth-ranking official at the Department of Justice. His wife works for Fusion GPS in the summer. He gets information, passes it to the FBI. That becomes the basis to spy on the Trump campaign. Plain and simple. This is the first time, to my knowledge, the FBI has admitted that, and it was good that we got some of that information out today. So this whole investigation...
The hesitation.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah. He hesitated. He sure... Yeah, he didn't want to answer your question.
Sure did. It took me 3 rounds to get it out of him. But I'll tell you what, this investigation started flawed with the dossier. And Matt Gaetz had some great questioning where when Mueller gets rid of Strzok, it's now flawed on the back end as well, because Bob Mueller didn't even ask Peter Strzok about all these text messages that show his animus to Donald Trump, to President Trump. So Bob Mueller, when the day he fired him, it was like a 15-minute meeting. He didn't even get into the fact that Peter Strzok had written all these terrible things about our president. He didn't even get into that. So this thing was flawed when it started on this based on this dossier, and it's flawed here at the end based on when they got rid of Strzok and didn't even ask him important questions.
Just like Andrew Weissman, who lost tens of thousands of Americans their jobs, overturned 9-0 Supreme Court, 4 innocent people sent to jail for a year, overturned by Fifth Circuit, and gets excoriated by a judge for withholding exculpatory evidence. He's on Team Mueller. There's no team in America that could ever be fair with the pit bull like that. Let me ask you this. At the heart of this, was Hillary's investigation rigged? So the favored candidate's investigation rigged? And was this a specific attempt to basically steal an election, pretty much? The smelly people, don't let them win.
Yeah, well, we always thought the Clinton investigation was rigged. Now what we've learned in the last several months and from the Inspector General's report, we know it was rigged. And the same people who ran the Russian investigation. They started the Russian investigation based on this dossier. This was such a key element to getting the warrant, the secret warrant, to spy on Carter Page associated with the Trump campaign. So it looks flawed from the get-go in that investigation as well, Sean.
Congressman, thanks for being with us. I'll tell you this. If these people get away with this, we've lost it.